So we're joined now by Jordan Chariton of Status Quo News. He's been on the ground in Kalamazoo doing some really important reporting about a toxic paper mill there, which seems to be having some local impact. So Jordan, first set up for us and for our audience as a reminder what you found on the ground, and then tell us what the reaction has been politically.
Yeah, Graphic Packaging International. It's a multi-billion-dollar packaging company. Its plant in Kalamazoo, Michigan, is a cardboard recycling plant. It's been there for a long time, and for a long time, residents have been complaining of horrible smells coming from that plant, predominantly in the poor Black part of Kalamazoo. High rates of asthma, COPD, heart disease, cancers in this neighborhood. But basically, nothing happened. And there was a health study initiated in 2020 by a resident, not the government, but a resident who just was really aggressive and paid out of pocket for a toxicologist to look at some of the gas data. This is what drove the health department to do a gas study, on the dozens of volatile gases coming out of this plant right into the Black community. Frankly, the health department dragged their feet for 3 years on this health study that could have been out probably in a year. When I went down there, we reported right next to the plant. I got sick just being next to that plant, trying to speak coherently. You get a headache, sore throat, burning eyes. As far as the 5 to 6 miles down the road, the smell and gases are now going into the west side, predominantly white neighborhood, because the plant expanded 2 years ago with the help of Governor Whitmer's administration. So essentially, you've had a plant emitting far, far more than is regulatory allowable for years. But because of big business and its financial importance to Kalamazoo, city officials basically ignored it. Thankfully, our report got traction. Also, thanks to Breaking Point for publishing our report from us on the ground. And this seemed to kind of force the health department to finally release the health study. And that health study found that they're releasing at least one gas, hydrogen sulfide, at 19 times higher the allowable limit.
So the article we put up a moment ago has some of those details. They say that the data that has now for the first time been publicly released over the past 4 days has shown hydrogen sulfide, which you just mentioned, concentrations near the factory as high as 4 parts per billion. It's a foul-smelling gas that can cause health issues when humans are exposed to it. Federal government says levels should not exceed 1.4 parts per billion for long-term exposure of a year or more. And of course, this plant has been in the community for years, so these residents are having to deal with, not only the quality of life of having to live next to this smelly, horrible, gaseous thing, but also real health impacts that they are feeling day to day. Tell us a little bit more about the residents you spoke with and what they had to say about how this has impacted their lives.
Yeah, and I just want to note that health study, although finally it's good that there is a health study, was lacking. For example, there was in 2020, they found it at 19 parts per billion, which is 10 times higher. So they kind of cherry pick their findings. But anyway, that's the Michigan Health Department. People in Flint know that. The residents, it really is stunning. I mean, just being a block away from that plant doing an interview, I was interviewing a resident, Deanne Winfield. She's got horrible asthma. Her 17-year-old daughter had a minor case of asthma before they moved blocks away from that plant. The asthma got way worse living next to that plant. She died of a severe asthma attack.
Oh my God.
Her 32-year-old son didn't really have asthma growing up. They moved near that plant. He's now on 24/7 oxygen and has had a lot of close calls, life or death. I've spoken with residents who live in that community. They can't really have guests over because the smell is so bad. Over the summer, they can't open their windows. I interviewed residents that you look at a playground on the block is empty most of the time because parents don't let their kids come out. There's a daycare right near, 300 feet near that plant. The kids are not allowed outside. There's elementary schools nearby. Kids don't go out for recess. And the really, I'm not shocked because this is America, but the really horrible thing is the city has known about this for years. The state has known about this for years. And they basically blew off the residents who were begging for health studies, data, something to be done, because this plant employs 650 people, donates to the colleges, the nonprofits. I mean, this is neoliberalism, and most of our factory jobs have been sent to other countries. So a lot of these cities are starving for employers and basically let these employers, in many ways, poison the community.
Wow.
But it's severely high rates of asthma, COPD, cancer. And also in 2015, there was 1,950 Black infants under the age of 1 who died in this neighborhood. And then mysteriously, they took the data off the website. So we don't know what the data is since then. But that was five times higher for Black infant death than white infants in Kalamazoo.
Wow. Unbelievable. And you can bet if something like this was placed, I mean, it just wouldn't even happen that it was placed in a predominantly white, affluent, suburban neighborhood. I mean, there's no way that they would let, people who are considered worthy by the state be and have more political power be poisoned year after year in this way. I mean, one thing I was wondering, the area I grew up in, there was a paper mill that we would drive by sometimes. It always smelled bad. Actually, Kyle and I on our honeymoon drove by one, and I immediately recognized the smell. I was like, that must be a paper mill. Sure enough, it was. Is this just what happens when paper mills are set up? Is this plant particularly egregious? Is it, the level of concentration that goes beyond just an odor and creates obviously health complications as you're tracking here? Give us some sense of that piece.
Yeah, I mean, the devil's advocate will say, Jordan, there's paper mills all over the country and all of them smell. That is true, because a lot of what they're releasing are smelly odors. Just because it smells doesn't necessarily equal health hazard.
Right.
The problem with this plant in particular, by the way, the net worth of Graphic Packaging is $7.8 billion. They're not using carbon filters, I've learned, at this plant, which is stunning. They're releasing over 30 types of volatile organic compounds, and they expanded in 2022 with the help of Governor Whitmer, who knew, and her administration knew of the complaints and the data. So they are releasing way more of these gases as of the last 2-3 years. So it's gotten a lot worse.
So they could mitigate the health impacts, but they choose not to.
Correct. And by the way, I mean, the state health department, the environmental department say they have, air sensors up, which is similar to what we're told by the EPA at East Palestine. But I talk to residents and they say those air sensors that are supposed to be around the plant, half the time they're malfunctioning or taken down. So it's really questionable how thorough the testing has been. This health study that came out, it's good that finally we know at least the hydrogen sulfide levels, but it did not test for other volatile organic compounds that independent testing from a toxicologist had found, including carbon disulfide, carbonyl sulfide, methylene chloride, a whole batch of potentially hazardous volatile organic compounds. So this plant in particular is basically just skating regulations because the state is allowing it to, because it's more expensive, to follow regulations. You have to spend more money to mitigate the release. And yeah, I mean, you said it right. Most of these kind of plants, whether it's a paper mill, when you have mining, fracking, they're chemical plants. They're usually dumped in predominantly poor Black, brown, now poor white communities, obviously Native American reservations. Yeah. With this, now that the white part of town, since the plant expanded and is emitting more gases, now the white part of town is complaining. So it'll be interesting to see if more affluent white people start complaining, maybe something will be done.
I really appreciate the way that you stay on top of these stories. I mean, you've been dogged and continuing to focus on, the poisoning of Flint and, the lack of any accountability there and the lack of really even fixing the problem in Flint, on the ground in East Palestine. You've really put a spotlight on these issues, and I think it's so vital because it shows you really the shocking treatment of, people who are considered less worthy. The American, underclass is considered by elites here in DC and around the country. So Jordan, thank you so much for your work and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. And please subscribe to Status Quo on YouTube if you can.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Soccer and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.